Thank you. Good morning, council colleagues, SEC staff, state agency and legislative representatives, and the public. I'd like to call this June 4th, 2024 meeting of the Sexual Equity Council to order. It's now 10:01 a.m. This time I'll call the roll. Councilman Abercrombie. Councilman Betts.
Present.
I am here. Councilman Gaddis.
Here.
Councilwoman Gordon. Councilwoman Hawkins.
Present.
Councilman Jefferson.
Here.
Councilman Karpowitz. Councilman Medina. Councilwoman Name. Councilman Shirley.
Present.
Councilwoman Thomas.
Present.
Councilwoman Valerie. Councilman Walton.
Present.
We have a quorum. Our first item on the agenda is the approval of the May 7th, 2024 SEC special meeting minutes. May I have a motion?
So move.
Have a
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to move into executive session for the purposes of discussing potential litigation.
So
So moved.
move.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Council members, you should have received a separate calendar invite for the executive session. Please leave the Zoom meeting and enter the Teams meeting for this discussion. We'll return to the Zoom following executive session, and we appreciate the public's patience. We will return shortly. Thank you again for your patience. I'd like to resume this special meeting of the Social Equity Council. I'll recall the roll. Councilman Abercrombie.
Here.
Councilman Betts. You're on mute.
Present. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Councilwoman Gordon, sorry. Councilwoman Hawkins.
Present.
I'm sorry. I am here. Councilman Gaddis.
Here as well.
Councilman Jefferson.
Here.
Councilman Karpowitz. Councilman Medina.
Present.
Councilwoman Name.
Present.
Councilman Shirley.
Present.
Councilwoman Skyers.
Present.
Councilwoman Valerie.
Present.
Councilman Walton.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum. We now resume our agenda action items, the documentation for which was sent to the council via email yesterday. There is no action to take on equity joint venture applications. So we will move on to our committee reports, starting with policy and governance. Chairman Shirley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was a special meeting on the 23rd of May for a Policy and Governance Committee to
Excuse me,
review.
Madam Chair, are we going out of order? Are we gonna do, did you mention that? I missed that. Agenda item number 6 was the executive director's report. Are we
Oh,
going?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. I don't know how I blanked on that. I apologize.
Quite
Director
all right.
Clay. Thank you, Councilman Jefferson.
Thank
Councilman
you.
Shirley, I'll be right back.
Understood.
So sorry.
Good morning, everyone. My report for June includes staffing updates, program updates, outreach and education, and the June goals for the staff. So under our staffing updates, we have identified 5 finalists out of 10 finalists to interview for legal program director. Those dates for interviews and interview questions are being finalized at this time. For program manager and research analysts, we have received a certified list of candidates, and we will be putting together the interview team this week, and then reviewing applications and scheduling interviews for finalists. As far as our program updates are concerned, I'll update on the Cannabis Business Revolving Loan Fund. the community reinvestment and workforce training and outreach and education. We received 2 new applications for the Canna Business Revolving Loan Fund, which brings the total applications to 18. So we received 2 new ones in May. The status of those applications, eight of them, we are waiting for additional information from the applicants. 6 are being packaged, which means we are reviewing all of the documents. And actually those have been, all of the documents for the 6 applications have been reviewed. We're just putting together the email to send over to the underwriting team. 1 is currently being underwritten, and we have 3 letters of interest, which means we have decided on 3 loans, and we will be sending packages out to 3 applicants for making an offer to their requests. Community reinvestment and community collaboration at this time is on hold. There may be some additional comments made about that during committee reports. For social equity and workforce development plans, we approved the following plans during the month of May. So we're moving along with the approvals of both workforce and social equity plans. With our outreach and education, we continue to work with Oaksterdam University and CohnReznick to prepare information so that the public, specifically those who reside in the DIA and folks affected by the war on drugs that have an interest in cannabis careers and or owning cannabis businesses, will have information about how to apply for the lottery, how to qualify as a social equity applicant, and again, some information on owning a cannabis business, but I'll get into a little bit more detail with that. So workforce training that we're offering, including a cannabis boot camp. So right now we have 2 entry-level workforce training programs that we're offering. The responsible vendor training currently has 16 members of the public enrolled, and the SEC staff will be taking that training course as well as a part of professional development, and also to understand the program and how to enable us to speak about it to the public and those that may be interested in taking that class. The same thing with the responsible vendor management training. So we have 33 enrolled, including not including, but in addition, the SEC staff is also signed up to take those courses. We are currently marketing the second round of our boot camp. We are in the midst of the first boot camp series, which is series 1, which started on May 30th. And unfortunately, I don't have the number, but I can send out the exact number of folks that are registered for that class. And then there's another 5-week boot camp series number 2, which will begin June 11th. Community conversations that we are finalizing the PSAs for, just getting all the signatures and getting ready to go out to New London, Norwalk, Stamford, and Bridgeport for community conversations. We will shortly begin working on Meriden, Bristol, and Ansonia. We have actually met with the mayors of each of those municipalities in an effort to identify trusted messengers. So we are still working on identifying trusted messengers in Meriden, Bristol, and Ansonia. If anyone from the council knows of an organization, I think I mentioned in one of my reports that as we get into these smaller towns and smaller municipalities, it becomes a little bit more difficult to identify a trusted messenger. In the larger cities, Waterbury, New Haven and Hartford, it was a little easier to identify organizations that take on community projects and programs and services in the communities. So we're going to continue to look in Meriden, Bristol, and Ansonia, but if anyone has any connections there or any organizations that you are familiar with there that could act as a trusted messenger, we'd gladly take them into consideration. And we did an event in Bridgeport, the Bridgeport Community and Business Expo on May 16th. Their SEC had a vendor booth, as well as we did a workshop. There was about 400, they reported 450 to 500 estimated attendees throughout the day. And the SEC workshop had about, I think it was like 35 attendees, but it was over 30. Our staff, namely Arlene Galindo, is going out and visiting some of the retail operations and other social equity owners, informing them about the workforce training that we have that their staff actually can take advantage of. So if they'd like them to take the responsible vendor training and the management training, as well as the boot camp, we're making sure that they're aware, since they are the people who are currently a part of the cannabis supply chain, and these programs would work very well for them. So we're making sure that they're aware, and that the business owners are aware that this training is happening, in addition to doing our digital media. I actually have seen some things on social media, which I'm very pleased to see in Facebooks and messages about the programs that we're offering right now. So our in-house digital media via social media, and those are things that we are not paying for at this time, but just taking advantage of that platform. We recorded with Oaksterdam University a live Zoom last week, and that again is about the workforce training, about the boot camps and other programs that we're offering. And that is now posted on our website. Actually, I don't think it's posted yet. I think that we're doing some editing to the video, and it will soon be posted on our YouTube channel, as well as our website, for the general public to have at their convenience. Our June goals, we will be finishing up and conducting the staff interviews, finishing the logistics for the strategic planning session, continuing with outreach and education for workforce training, lottery, and community conversations, working on getting all of our ducks in a row as far as the new legislation and the reporting mandates. So staff is working on that now. And then, of course, working on the fiscal year-end budget closeout. Next meetings of the council: Outreach Committee, June 14th, Reinvestment Workforce, June 18th, Policy Governance, June 20th, Finance Committee, July 9th, Personnel Committee, July 24th, and the next meeting of the council will be July 2nd. I am assuming that we may have to have a special meeting, so we will know by the end of this week if we will be scheduling a special meeting, especially to vote on things that we have a deadline of July 1st on. So we're getting all that organized and in order. So we'll let you know shortly on a special meeting for June. And again, we're on Facebook, we're on social media. If you don't follow us, please do so. A lot of interesting and good information on the council, as well as the partners and the organizations that we are working with and funding. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Councilwoman Valeries.
Thank you. I was wondering, Executive Director Clay, if you have outcomes for Oaksterdam's first contract, so that we understand the number of people that took advantage of those programs, the cost of those programs based on the number of people, and what the outcomes were.
Yes, I do have that. I shared that with the Finance Committee at its last meeting. I'm happy to send that information out to the full council.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Could I just entertain one additional question? So I believe that the Oaksterdam program is to help folks be prepared for the lottery in part. Do we have an understanding of when the next lottery is going to happen?
Do not at this time.
Okay. Is there any consideration around the timing of the training based on the lottery timing?
Well, we were under the impression when we put this into place so that there was going to be another lottery. And what I wanted to do was to get folks educated early enough so that they could begin pulling their information together. But we don't. We expected some information by now, but at this time we just don't have any.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Director Clay.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to our committee reports, beginning with Policy and Governance. Chairman Shirley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Policy and Governance Committee had a special meeting on May 23rd to review and update bylaws to reflect the new legislative changes affecting council membership and reporting requirements. Director Clay at that meeting confirmed a plan to revise bylaws with Christina Diamond and circulate prior to our June 20th meeting. We discussed the possibility of a joint meeting with the Personnel Committee on June 20th to review the draft. There were some concerns that were expressed about the need to formulate a process for council input prior to legislative changes are made. Chairperson Comer clarified that the adoption of bylaws, the existing legislative changes must be done by July 1st. So we concluded that the legislative changes as stated require an update to the existing bylaws. A draft of the bylaws will be circulated by June 7th. We do have in hand one iteration of a draft that conflates the new requirements laid out by the legislation with the existing bylaws. There will be a joint meeting, or maybe a joint meeting, but there will be a policy committee meeting on June 20th to review the drafts of the new bylaws, and a full council meeting vote will be required before July 1st, which anticipates, I think, a special meeting. We were we look for ways to avoid a special meeting just for that purpose. But I believe that that's not possible. So a special meeting will be required, it seems. And that's my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chairman Shirley. Councilman Abercrombie.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chairman Shirley. I just wanted to ask for a copy of the draft that's been circulated. I'm happy. I offered at the policy meeting to help with review and do what I can to support. So if you want to send that over, I'm happy to look at it, look at the statute, and provide my 2 cents and be helpful in any way I can.
Sure. Well, absolutely. And with your permission, Madam Chair, I can circulate that to members of the committee.
Absolutely.
Okay. Will do.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Chairman Shirley. Next up is Reinvestment Workforce Committee. Chairman Name.
Thank you so much. We have not met since the last meeting of the council. If you remember, we had voted to put a 1-week pause on to get clarification from the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus. Since then, there have been many developments and communications that have come across, both in terms of recommendations from the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus, as well as some work being done on our financial audit from the comptroller's office. And so really would like for the council to today hopefully be able to discuss our next steps on what we need to do in regards to the requests that have come in and how they impact our timeline on reinvestment. And I guess before kicking off discussion, I'd like to make a motion to pause any reinvestment activities until the completion of the special report from the comptroller's office.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Councilman Betts.
Yes, good morning. As you guys know, I just want to get right into it. While I hold a deep respect for the governor and the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus, I believe it's very crucial that it's clear that this is an independent office. and our duty is to uphold the principles of social equity without yielding to political pressures or agendas. Having grown up in the same area I visit every Wednesday, I've witnessed firsthand the dire need for meaningful change. These communities aren't just numbers. They're made up of individuals struggling against the weight of historical injustices, exacerbated by devastating impact of the war on drugs, in which I was directly impacted by. And I still today dealing with those same residues. Now, regarding the delay in funds and allocation, we must acknowledge the complexity of the task at hand. It is imperative that we approach this process with diligence and foresight, ensuring that every dollar is utilized effectively to address the deep-rooted inequities stemming from the war on drugs. Although a delay is very frustrating, at this time with all the noise that's been going on, I believe it's very necessary for us to have a real comprehensive plan that will consider the diverse needs of communities we serve. Rushing into distribution without proper assessment and strategic planning risks perpetuating, now watch this, the same injustices we seek to rectify. Moreover, as an independent office, we have a responsibility to prioritize transparency, accountability, our actions, ensuring that funds are allocated in a manner that maximize the impact and foster the long-term sustainability. Ultimately, while delays must be unavoidable, our commitment should still remain unwavering to advocate and empower those who have been marginalized and disenfranchised. We must stay to our mandate, independent of external pressures to affect meaningful change in the lives in which we serve. So I think it's very important that we consider all of that. And I take this very, very personal and serious because I'm out in the trenches where folks are hurting, where they don't even know what type of situations they're in. And I think it's our responsibility to cover that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Betts. Councilman Jefferson.
Good morning, all, and thank Councilmember Corey Betts for his comments. I'll be opposing the motion made by Councilwoman Naeem, and I'll share with you why. I've been serving on this council for the last 3 years. I'm one of the original committee council members, along with a few others on this call. I'm very proud, as I said, in the December meeting where we met in person, of the council and the work we've done. I don't think we get enough credit, particularly in doing this in an unpaid capacity where we're utilizing a lot of time and a lot of energy. And I'm very proud as to how far we've come as a council. And it's very frustrating and very annoying, quite frankly, to hear, all this noise coming from what I would consider Johnny-come-latelys to the table. We been doing a lot of work over the last 3 years, and we haven't heard from anyone, absolutely anyone, and folks might show up at this meeting or that meeting, but we really haven't heard from anyone, not legislators, not the governor's office. We plowed along, and we had a pilot program, a test program, which went fairly well. Were there some glitches? Absolutely, there were some glitches, but that did not stop this council, this very council, for voting to pursue a larger initiative with more dollars. It did not stop the council. The council voted for it. We voted on a plan of action. Then all of a sudden we get, and by the way, let me remind you that the governor, we had a special meeting with the governor. We met with the governor. The governor requested our assistance in helping state agencies, namely childcare, in terms of dollars, and supporting those agencies with dollars, housing, and around food insecurity. And we agreed, and even workforce development. And we agreed, and no one had anything to say about this. All of a sudden now, Section 128 comes into the picture and it says, oh, the way we're spending money is not aligned with Section 128. No one said that when the governor requested funds from the Social Equity Council. We kept plowing along with that plan, and then all of a sudden we have a pause. I agree with Council Member Betts. Yeah, I have great respect for the office of the governor and the Black Puerto Rican Caucus and what they do, but we're an independent council. I thank them for their recommendations. I think they can do whatever they have to do, but we're an independent council, and we're about to undermine our own power. We're about to shoot ourselves in the foot. And trust me, we could delay, but we'll never see this money again. That's just absolutely out of the question. We will never see this money. It has to be reappropriated. It's not coming back to us. In fact, I really believe this is the first step in dismantling the Social Equity Council. I don't think we're going to have a council. We're certainly not going to have a council where we're allowed to distribute funds to our communities. And that raises some additional questions that I really have a problem with. Because now it was okay to distribute $6 million to 6 independent communities, but now we're talking about $22 million, and that gives us a lot of power. And folks seem to have a problem with that, and that just doesn't resonate well with me. That Black and brown people now have a power to return and distribute money to our communities, and all of a sudden we're getting pushed back. And soon or sooner rather than later, we're not going to even have that power we're only going to have the power to make recommendations, never mind distribute the money. We did a fantastic job. The staff did a fantastic job. The executive director did a fantastic job. She came up with the plan that we begged her for. And let's not forget, on the outreach money and the marketing money, we were going to transfer that money as well. No one talked about Section 128, and now it's an issue. So I'm not going to belabor any points I've already made. I'm very disgusted by it. I'm very disappointed by it. I believe, unfortunately, in this regard, we've failed our community in terms of redistribution of wealth. And what's really, really offensive to me is the fact that no one called for a pause when they were incarcerating Black and brown people. No one called for a pause. No one stopped to even give it any consideration of what that meant to what we now call disproportionately impacted areas. And now all of a sudden, when it's time to redistribute money to these communities, now we want to pause and figure out how to distribute this money. And this money is not going to go back into the community as promised, and not the way it should go back into the community. Through you, Madam Chair, I yield.
Thank you, Councilman Jefferson. Any additional comments or questions? Councilman Shirley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the risk of trying everybody's patience, I was not at the meeting. I had to miss that meeting with the BPRC. And frankly, I just have a question about what the specific concerns are, because I think I'm recalling the steps we took to get to where we are with regard to reinvestment, and it seemed to me they were methodical. And as it turns, and that we had in unanimous consent among council members in every step. So I confess I'm not that familiar with Section 128 and how we are out of line with that. So I'm just disappointed, certainly, that we're asked to delay this for a full year, but also just concerned as to what exactly is the problem, so that we can straighten it out and move forward.
So I'm going to ask the chair of reinvestment and workforce to respond to your question.
Sure, thank you. So there's a couple pieces here. The first, to your point, was what is the concern and questions that were coming from the Black and Puerto Rican caucus. And I think there were concerns around understanding what is a strategic plan that we have as a council? How are we thinking about the distribution of these funds strategically? And they felt that there was not much communication with them as a caucus of people of color that are representing communities of color. They wanted to be more aligned. There were concerns about, because of the lack of alignment, they are trying to allocate funds to some of the same groups that we are doing it. And because there's no communication there, either some groups are getting more than they need and we've got other gaps left. So overall, we lacked a coordinated strategy. If you remember back in January and February, there was a big push by myself and others on we need to align with the different departments at the state, with the legislators, to understand what is being funded, where are the gaps, and be strategic on the investments that we make. That's one piece of it. The second piece of it, which quite frankly was a bigger concern for me, was a letter we received on Friday asking for an audit of the Social Equity Council's finances. Now, the governor has requested the comptroller's office to do that. I do not feel comfortable making any decisions on any kind of funding until that report is complete. There's concerns out there. I mean, people could be making noise for whatever reasons. Councilman Jefferson has shared a lot in terms of what could be. I want to stick to what's actually happening, and what's actually happening is we're hearing a lot of noise. We are hearing a lot of concerns. These concerns are not coming out of thin air. There's something behind them, and now we're being audited. So until there's a report put forward, and quite frankly, to Councilman Betts's point, until we have a very clear, strong strategic plan on what we are doing and how we are funding this, I really don't feel comfortable saying, yep, let's move forward with, what we did with the pilot program, which again is raising a lot of questions and concerns. I hope that answers your question, Councilman Shirley.
Thank you. Yes, I think sounds like to me the issue is that we did not bring them along step by step. I'm just, just trying to understand, frankly, what the concern was. But thank you for that. That's helpful. Although let me just add this my opinion. I'm in a business where we allocate dollars a lot for different things, but it's to pause every time we hear noise. Specific issues, absolutely, and I think there are some there. I think there are some specific issues that you outline, but I would say just to pause because we hear noise. We allow ourselves to be victims of people who simply want to create havoc. So, but I do understand specific concerns. But I would not want noise to impede our progress. But thank you, though. I do appreciate the explanation.
Madam Chair, if I'm just quickly may through you, and I just want to read. I don't think it's noise. I think there are actual concerns coming from folks that, we all have a lot of respect for. I think, just kind of taking others' words on noise, but I think there are legitimate concerns there. So what about that?
Thank you. Councilman Medina.
Yeah, I echo concerns around moving quickly while there are questions and a proposed audit. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I just think to put everything in context is also deeply important here. Mass incarceration was a multi-decade project that occurred. And the drug war was over, I believe the last estimate is $3 trillion across the country in terms of costs. That has dramatically affected people's lives. $30 million compared to that overwhelming capital cost and human cost is, incomprehensible. And also, I hear Councilman Jefferson's point on the state itself has a $24 billion annual budget, and that there seems to be a significant spotlight on the funds. And I think part of that is because of the mission of the organization and its intent and purpose. There's a deep level of interest to do this right. And sometimes I think also a misaligned perspective on what we can do right with the limited amount of funds that may seem like a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things spread out across 22 communities, is actually not a significant amount of money to resolve so many issues related to mass incarceration, related to poverty. I do think there is an opportunity right now, if we move towards a pause, to be reflective of the decisions that we've made to date. I think kind of primarily the decisions on the pilot program of distributing funds through regional philanthropic organizations was done for a variety of reasons at the time. But there are choices that we can be making as a council, because what I heard for the portions of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus meeting that I was able to attend were concerns around mission of the funds, and for folks who can correct me if I'm wrong, but I understood that to be the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus feeling that the purpose of these funds were for development of economic opportunities in communities historically harmed by the drug war. And that there were questions about some funds going to some organizations that it felt like there was a hard line to draw between economic opportunity, the drug war, and the funds that we're putting out in the mission of those organizations. I do think as a council, coming up with our own definition strategically of what we identify as economic opportunity or social and economic mobility is pretty critical in being able to work with any philanthropic partner that's doing work on our behalf to put money out in the community, one. And two, I do think revisiting how we handle the 22 various DAIs feels really important. I'm of the opinion that while their poverty is certainly spread out across Connecticut, it is concentrated in very specific communities that also have a high rate of incarceration. 5 of those communities make up 50% of the people in Connecticut prisons today. And we all know what those communities are. And it's some version of a tiered system that is prioritizing historical impact of the drug war included in our definition of economic opportunity for the use of these funds feels really important. And so I do encourage the pause and the revisiting. And I know Councilman Naim, you've been working on this for a long time, and so would love to learn more about that process. But I can't, again, just as a final point, can't underestimate that while there is intense pressure, intense focus, we really do need to kind of balance this in the grand scheme of things of it is not going to be a year in which we resolve all of the historical damages of the drug war. The amount of money cannot immediately resolve the challenges that have been created by the drug war. We do need to get money out the door to organizations that are rooted in an aligned vision of economic opportunity for people in communities impacted by the drug war. And if that does require a bit more time to dot our I's and cross our T's and enable champions to even do more work on our behalf, I think that's reasonable and encourage us to vote in that direction.
Thank you, Councilman Medina. Councilwoman Hawkins.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I just want to share, I have definitely had some mixed feelings about us delaying getting monies out to these communities. I agree. I grew up in the projects of Hartford. I understand we own a business in downtown Hartford, and we see every day challenges related to communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. So I did feel it pretty important to keep this money moving and getting out to these communities. But upon some of the other discussions that I have been having to understand this better, I do understand that there is money going out to these communities. This would be more money, and I think it needs to go to these communities. So I felt a little bit better understanding that the pause doesn't mean that these communities are not getting monies. They're just not getting as much as we would like to see them get. Through some of our work with the strategic planning, we really want to see this money get an exponential benefit. So we've been talking about when we think strategically, are there opportunities for us to look at monies that are already going to some of these communities and using the social equity money to be a multiplier, as it were. And I think these are some conversations that we can have once we get to the strategic planning discussion. We're not quite there, but that's the kind of conversation that I'd love to see us have more of, is how do we not only get these monies out to these communities, but we make them a multiplier of what they're already getting. So it really shows a benefit to these communities. I do think we need to take our time now that we're having the discussion about pausing the monies going out, and really ask ourselves as a council, how do we make sure that we are making the best of and getting the money to the right communities. So I'll leave it there and just say, I think we as a council can have more discussions about how to do that better. And I'd love to see us do that before we make any further decisions.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hawkins. Councilman Walton.
Yes, good morning, everyone. And well, I appreciate the comments on both sides. We talked about the work that we do as a council and the time we give in service. And I believe, because I know personally, because I think it's important, of all the reasons we spoke about, especially, waking up in the Fairhaven section of New Haven like I do every day, going to work and seeing the continued impact on the war on drugs as our kids have to get to the bus stop, stepping over people passed out on the streets and things of that nature. And I think about my role in the New Haven community, and I think about the folks that I have sat in front of, and we've talked about funding that is going to come in support. And I think that that's going to reflect poorly on folks who have boots on the ground in the community. In particular, I can speak for myself, and in New Haven, I know Councilman Jefferson can speak for himself. But I also question whether or not the sudden interest in the SEC's work, as well as a request for an audit, is that a direct reflection on this council? And so while we are, if there is a pause, which I am opposed to, when we start asking the questions of staff, we're going to ask the hard questions of ourselves. And I hope that's part of the equation, whether or not we vote yay or nay on this today. And I yield my time.
Thank you, Councilman Walton. Councilwoman Gordon.
Sorry, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to remind us of the meeting with the BPRC where Representative Walker, who's chair of the Appropriations Committee, told us that those funds would not be going anywhere. So I just want to clarify the record for that. I think a lot of what I would say has already been said by many people on this council, but I do think that it's really, really important. Like, we're not the legislature. The legislature created this entity that we sit on. So I think the fact that I think there should be some deference, I guess, to their wants and needs, and also the governor's office. So I think Councilman Betts said it well, Councilman Medina said it well. There's nothing that I really need to reiterate, but I do want to remind us that Representative Walker did tell us that those funds would not be swept. They wouldn't be going anywhere. They wouldn't be spent on anything else. And this gives us an opportunity to do it right. I don't think, like, to Councilman Medina's point, in the grand scheme of things, rushing to get $22 million into the community to some agencies and not spending it the right way and the best way is not the best way to do this. We all give of our time, we give of our energy, and I'd love to see us actually make a transformational difference and not just give out a couple $100,000 here or there and walk away without making a difference. So I understand the frustration by some members of this council, but I also want to remind us this was passed by statute by the legislature. And if they are asking us to pause and also giving us the guarantee that they're not going to spend it, I will say I've known Representative Walker for most of my adult life, and I know her to be a person of her word. So if she says to us, this is what's happening, we should believe that. I have no reason to believe anything other than that. And a year is not a long time. By January, we will need to have a really good plan to present to the Appropriations Committee. So I just want to urge us to, like, it's taken decades and decades and decades to get us here. So I don't understand why we can't pause for 7 months or 8 months to get this right and spend it in the right way possible. No one's saying let's back off for 10 years while more people get incarcerated. Like, I am troubled by why do we want to rush to not do it right, just so a couple people could get a little bit more money and not really figure out how we're going to drastically solve problems and create economic opportunity for thousands in the state, which I think we do have the opportunity to do, instead of just being a slush fund for nonprofits that are already being funded by the state, by youth violence prevention, by like lots of these other programs. We should be the place where individuals who have no access to resources are able to access this money. So I think that was the intent originally. I do not want to be the organization that funds people that are already getting state funded and just padding and adding on. So I think a lot has been said that I agree with, but I just want to be careful and the money isn't going anywhere. We are just being deliberate and intentional with the spending, and this will allow us to create a really good plan. Most of us on this council won't be here in 5 years. And I do challenge the notion that they're trying to get rid of the council. They kind of just want us to get it right. And I would like to take the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Abercrombie.
Thank you. Yeah, no, but Council Member Gordon said it all. I definitely want to show deference to the BPRC because we wouldn't be here without them. And I do think this is an opportunity to build that trust back and get this right. I also wanted to provide a little context, with regards to the funding. So we've seen over the past few years kind of an unprecedented amount of federal and state dollars going into communities through the federal stimulus money, the ARPA budget, the Community Investment Fund, which is $175 million a year. There's been carry forwards. The legislature has used surplus dollars to carry forward for grants to the next year. So there's been a lot of money out there. And I think a pause allows us to look into, where the money has gone, where it's been successful, and where we can, as Council Member Hawkins said, multiply the effects that we've been seeing. In a quick scan of where the money from the pilot went, about 1 in 5 of the entities had already received funding from either DECD or from other state agencies through the budget or bonding. So, we should look at that and see, where the money is going, where we'd like it to go, and take this as opportunity to really pause and think about what the core goal of this reinvestment is, and where we'd like to make an impact. I just really appreciate the conversation we've been having and totally respect, everyone's comments today. But I definitely will be voting to support the pause and hopefully come up with a plan that the BPRC can support, that everyone on this council can support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Shirley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to be in alignment with the BPRC. If they have concerns, definitely want to see those concerns addressed. The one thing, though, I think for those who are listening in and who may not be familiar with what we're doing, I don't think we want to leave them with the impression that we rushed to do something. I don't get the impression that we rushed. This was something that we planned. We actually had a pilot. We planned the pilot. Then we looked at the pilot. We made some adjustments, and now we're going forward. One of the things we did not say, which maybe we want to say to Councilman Abercrombie's point, is that these funds have to go to organizations that don't get any money. We didn't say that. So we can say that if that's what we wish to say. But I think I get the point. We need to confer with the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus more so that they feel comfortable that what we're doing is what they have established this group to do. The audit, I don't think should make us uncomfortable. I think that we've had processes in place the whole time. How funds are spent, we should be comfortable with how they were spent. If they find some issues that we need to address, we will address them. Generally, audits do. It's not uncommon for an audit to find something. Doesn't mean that you did something wrong or committed a crime. It just means that you can do this better. Okay, audits can be useful. So I'm looking forward actually to the audit to be useful. And I think again that I'm disappointed that we have not established the kind of rapport with the BPRC that makes them comfortable. And I'm hoping that we can, going forward, that we actually can do that. And with that, Madam Chair, I only have one other question. What do we plan to do in the pause?
Madam Chairwoman, point of order. I just would like to say that I don't think we should be discussing a motion. I don't think having a strategic planning meeting now about what we're going to do in between the pause is going to produce anything of value or be healthy. I really want to get on with the business of the SCC right now. And I don't see any value to discussing what are we going to do in the interim through you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Councilman Gaddis. We do have a strategic planning committee. And I know that Councilwoman Hawkins and Councilman Karpowitz are working with Director Clay to get that process in place. So I think to your question, Councilman Shirley, that answer will reveal itself as we go forward. So if it's all right, I would like to yes, Councilman Gaddis.
You know, I don't have a nice speech to give. I just want to say that early on, I was certainly one of the proponents that wanted this money out in the streets. What Michael Jefferson is saying is very visceral for me, and I understand his passion. And I think that everybody should have a Mike Jefferson in their midst to keep them grounded. And so I fully support what he's saying. However, I'm certainly going to support the motion. I've been in politics a long time, and I understand the competing nature of interests and wills. And I have a lot of good friends that are members of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus. I have some folks who I respect highly in the governor's office. I have some folks who I respect highly on this council. And for me, it's very simple. We need to pause. I'm not going to get into the details why I support that. I think it's the prudent thing to do. I look forward to being an instrument of evolution and change. But I will say, I think we got to amend the motion. The motion as it was proposed says to pause, and it's tied to the comptroller's audit. I think that the motion should be to pause until further consideration, because, you know, say the comptroller wraps up his work next week. I don't think none of us next week want to take up this matter again in July. So let's just, if we're going to have a pause, let's just have a real pause so we could get down to good work and good evolution. So I would like to amend the motion to state that we are pausing until further consideration.
Councilwoman Naeem, do you accept that?
As a friendly amendment.
I will accept the friendly amendment.
Great.
That's it for me, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Gaddis. So with the friendly amendment accepted, I will measure the minds. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
No, I'm sorry I couldn't get the thing on. I oppose.
Okay. Any abstentions?
One.
Councilman Shirley. The motion passes. Thank you all very much. I appreciate the conversation. Councilman Abercrombie?
I was just going to ask the reinvestment chair. There's been talk about the previous plan of reinvestment dollars. I was wondering if that could just be recirculated. I'd love to give that a look and use that as a starting point for my thinking.
Councilwoman Naeem, that was directed towards you.
I apologize, if Councilwoman Abercrombie, if you wouldn't mind repeating, someone walked into my office.
No problem. There's been mention of the previous reinvestment plan that, you know, we did a pilot and now there's a new plan. I'd like to just have that recirculated so that we can review
Sure.
and hopefully guide our thinking going forward.
Will do. Actually, Director Clay, if you could just send resend the plan that was established and proposed when we voted on the funding to the full council, please.
Will do.
Very good. Councilwoman Valeries.
Thank you. In the spirit of requesting information, which seems to be my role today, I was wondering if there is a report out on the outcomes of the first round of pilot funding to the about 175 different organizations that received that funding. Are they accountable for outcomes? And if so, is there a report on what those outcomes are?
Through you, Madam Chair, if I may. Yes, they are responsible for outcomes, and we had planned to have a full report by August.
Thank you. I think that will help this committee as we think about the next steps with the reinvestment funds.
Thank you. Our next committee report is Finance Committee. Chairman Gatz.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. We met last week on May 30th, and it was my first meeting as the finance chair. And it was a quick meeting, about an hour. We went over a couple of things. We received a general overview of expenditures. There was nothing extraordinary to report about there. And I'm glad to see Councilwoman Valeries bringing up Oaksterdam University. We had some substantial conversation around their contract, their deliverables and their outcomes, somewhat along the lines of what you're speaking about today. Whether or not their contract is a little bit too rich and lucrative, we're going to get to the bottom of it. But we are looking at that dynamic. The folks from Oaksterdam University were present on the call. They shed some light and gave some insight. Again, I'll have a much more robust report next month. Also, just so you know, I asked the staff at SEC if they could provide us with some documentation, some invoices, some backups, etc., just so we could do a little bit more than a cursory glance of some of these financial documents. And again, we're not looking for any issues or trouble, but we want to make sure there's no issues or trouble. So that's what we're doing there. I will be recommending to the Finance Committee and hopefully to the full council that $50,000 threshold that triggers approval by the council be lower to $25,000. Why? Listen, I'm certainly not into the business of micromanaging, but I think in the climate that we are in, I believe that a little bit more scrutiny is better than no scrutiny or being laxed on a scrutiny. So I think we're going to recommend that threshold be lower to $25,000 from $50,000. So once again, I just want to report out that the folks at the SEC, as far as the staff, particularly Jennifer Stevens, they have been very helpful and very responsive with getting information to me. So thank you. Madam Chairwoman, that concludes my formal report, but I do have a question. May I follow up with my question, Madam Chairwoman?
Absolutely. Sure.
Through you, Madam Chairwoman, to the Executive Director, I want to make sure that the flow of information from the SEC staff to sister and partner and state agencies, for instance, in the case of the Office of Workforce Strategy, I want to make sure that as far as communication in passing documents back and forth. I just want to make sure that that is very fluid and that there's no friction. And what I'm getting at is if the Office of Workforce Strategy in their work to look at workforce plans and to provide input, I just want to make sure that they're not being impeded in any way by any sort of bureaucracy or pseudo bureaucracy within the SEC staff. Through you, Madam Chairwoman, to the Executive Director, how is that whole transaction of information from the SEC to OWS, for an example, how is that going?
As far as I'm aware, there is no impediment of providing information.
All right, so through you, Madam Chairwoman, so if someone from OWS requests information from SEC, you guys get it to them right away? Is there like protocols? Do you have to approve of it first? For instance, could someone from OWS contact someone from your staff for information and get that information immediately without having you first having to approve that request? Through you, Madam Chairwoman.
So I ask my staff that anytime anything goes out of our office, that I have an opportunity to take a look at it. In a lot of cases, I think I can add some value to the information that is being sent. I also want to check for accuracy of information that is being sent, because anything that goes out certainly falls on me. So yes, I have asked my staff to let me know what is going out of the office when it is being sent out.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chairwoman, me asking these questions are just because I, as a council member, I want to ensure that communication is very fluid and it's very fast. I don't think state agencies should be sitting around waiting for other state agencies. We're all in this together. So I'm hoping that SEC staff and OWS and other state agencies share information seamlessly. That's all I have to say about the matter, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you.
We are transparent.
Thank you, Councilman Gaddis, Director Clay. Moving on to the Outreach Committee, Chairwoman Gordon.
Hi, everyone. We meet on Friday, so we do not have a report. I think Executive Director Clay gave the community conversations update, so we will have a report at the next meeting.
Very good, thank you. And last but not least, Personnel Committee, Chairman Jefferson.
Through you, Madam Chair, in light of the information provided by Chairman Shirley, and given the status of the bylaws and whatnot, we will reserve comment from the Personnel Committee until we resolve those particular issues around the bylaws and personnel matters to be included.
Thank you, Chairman Jefferson. I think that is all we have. Is there anything for the good of the order?
I do, Madam Chair. I just want, and through you, it's important for me to say this because over the last few months, there's been this narrative that's been out there about the SEC. The SEC has done wonderful work. No one is really saying anything about the work we do with establishing equity in the adult cannabis business, which suggests to me that we're doing fine. We're doing very good. And I think there's going to be some, there's areas of improvement. And I think we're going to maximize our potential in that area. As far as reinvestment, which, really is a smaller part of what we do, I don't like the narrative that's been created. And as Councilmember Shirley stated, we welcome an audit. I think the finance chair, the current finance chair will own the fact that there, he found no discrepancies in anything, any of the documentation he received from the staff. So I think we welcome the audit. Let's keep in mind, we're probably one of the most transparent organizations out here. All of our meetings are public. All of our documents are public information, open to public scrutiny. So it's not even about that. It's just that the fact that the narrative is that's been created is, around us is, for me is disturbing. It's insulting. For all the work we put in, that folks can run around saying some of those things. So I just want the general public to know that our books are open to you. We welcome those who want to investigate or have some interest in our spending. There's no question in my mind that we're above board, and that's how we're operating. I think that narrative has been put out there to justify some of the things that's going on now, and I want you to keep that in mind. I know the narrative is false, and I think it's been out there to do some of the things that's been done and will be done to the Social Equity Council. Through you, Madam Chair, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jefferson.
Madam Chairwoman, move to adjourn.
May I have a second?
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Enjoy
Aye.
the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.